Thank you for that, Imogen, and welcome everyone. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Depending on where you're joining us from. I think a very warm welcome to today's WAHEN Global Community Seminar. It's customary for us here in Australia that before we do any presentation, we acknowledge the traditional custodian. So I'd like to take the opportunity to do it here as well. Acknowledging that I'm joining you guys from the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, paying the traditional custodians of this land my respect, acknowledging the indigenous ways of knowing, doing, and learning actually shapes the way we do equity as well. And I think it's important we continue to advocate for education systems that recognize that indigenous knowledge to remove the structural barriers and support that self-determination and inclusion. So thank you, everyone. And I'm very pleased to be joining you all for today's conversation. And also, it's really a pleasure to chair this session, to bring together colleagues from across the world who are deeply committed to widening access in higher education and advancing that equity through leadership, community partnership, and institutional change. I've had a brief snippet of what the presentation looks like. So I think you guys are in for some really good, interesting insights. My name is Sonal Singh. I'm based, as I said, here in Australia. I work in student equity and pathways, and I'm the head of equity pathways at the University of Technology, Sydney. My role primarily has a focus on system level change for access and success for students from underrepresented cohorts. Much of my work sits at that intersection of policy, institutional practice, and community-led design. So today's discussion really resonates strongly with me, and I'm sure with the presenters and the participants who have joined today as well. So first of all, we will go through all the presentations in order. Each speaker has 15 minutes. And so hold your questions. You can put the questions in the chat, but we will take all those questions towards the end of all the presentations and roughly have around 20 minutes for those discussions. So first of all, I would like to start off by inviting Joshua Simuka to start off with sharing their presentation, which is on leading for equity, university-wide strategies for access and student success in higher education. Over to you, Joshua.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity to present in this platform. My name is Joshua Simuka, as indicated by Sonal. I'm joining you from Zimbabwe, which is in Southern Africa. So I'm so excited to be here, and I'm coming in from Harare Institute of Technology, which is one of the state universities in Zimbabwe. Allow me to share my slides. Confirm that you can see my slides?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So my focus on my topic is leading for equity. And I'm looking into university-wide strategies for access and student success in higher education. I'm paying attention to how can we enhance access to higher education, as well as how to improve success rate in higher education, how students can thrive in academics. Higher education has long been described as the great equalizer across regions, across continents, and different income groups. Access to and success within universities remain profoundly unequal, which is the problem that we are trying to solve. While enrollments have expanded globally, who enters university, who succeeds, and who ultimately graduates still reflects deep socioeconomic gendered, and geographic divides. This is the gap that we intend to close. And today, universities are no longer judged solely by their research outputs or global rankings, but by their social legitimacy, which is their ability to widen opportunity, ability to make an impact, ability to transform lives, ability to contribute meaningfully to inclusive national development. So this raises uncomfortable but necessary questions that we need to ask ourselves as leaders, as policymakers, and stewards of higher education. Let me ask you, who is still excluded from our universities? And why are they still excluded? Is access enough? Or have we normalized student failure among those from disadvantaged backgrounds? What does equity truly mean in an era of massification, in an era of digital transformation, as well as constrained public funding? And one key question is, are our institutions designed for student success or for student survival? Ladies and gentlemen, leading for equity demands intentional leadership. It demands evidence-based strategies and system-wide transformation that places student success at the core of institutional missions. Equity, therefore, is not a peripheral agenda, but a leadership responsibility and a governance issue that we need to take into consideration. When I'm referring to student access, I'm referring to opportunities for individuals from diverse social, economic, geographic, and demographic backgrounds to enter post-secondary education, particularly universities and colleges. It goes beyond the mere availability of institutions to include the fair admission processes, to include affordability, to include preparedness and structural inclusivity. If you go through literature, scholars emphasize that access is multidimensional because it encompasses physical access, that is availability of institutions and learning modalities. Do these students have access to these institutions? Economic access. We are looking into affordability of fees, financial aid and scholarships, cost structures of our fees. Then we also look into academic access, where we focus into entry requirements and preparedness. And again, social and cultural access, where we look into institutional climate, language, and inclusivity. So how do we address student access in higher education? According to Morgenson, in his article of 2016, equitable access requires addressing formal barriers, such as admission criteria, as well as informal barriers, where we look into socioeconomic disadvantage and unequal schooling. According to UNESCO 2022, they define access as the extent to which higher education systems enable participation by all segments of society, especially those underrepresented groups. So without targeted support mechanisms, expanded access may lead to lower status, lead to stratified participation, where only disadvantaged students are concentrated in lower status institutions or programs with poor outcomes. Student success is another variable, again, that we are looking into. Once we have students into the university system, now the focus is on student success, which refers to the extent to which students are able to persist, they are able to progress with their education, they are able to complete their studies and achieve meaningful learning and postgraduate outcomes. It is a holistic concept that extends beyond graduation rates to include academic achievement, to include academic engagement, to include well-being, to include employability. We are looking into skills and competencies and personal development. According to Koo et al., he emphasized that success is shaped by institutional practices such as inclusive teaching, advising, mentoring, and high-impact learning experiences. So from a policy perspective, according to OECD, it frames that student success as the ability of higher education systems to translate access into completion and positive labor market and social outcomes, particularly from the disadvantaged groups. Thus, success is not only an individual achievement, but a system-level performance indicator linked to equity, efficiency, and national development. So, expanding access without ensuring success, it risks reproducing inequality. There is need for a balance to ensure that there is equal balance between access and success, to reduce dropout rates, to reduce delayed completion among underrepresented students. Conversely, focusing on success without equitable access, it entrenches elite participation, thereby defeating the purpose of equality. As UNESCO notes, equitable higher education systems are those that widen participation while simultaneously ensuring that students are supported to succeed. Leadership for equity, therefore, requires universities to address the entire student life cycle from aspiration before they join the university and entry to graduation and transition into the society and work. In order to find answers to the problem that we have, a qualitative multi-case study design was carried out using 5 universities and a total of 15 senior leaders within these universities. So what emerged? What strategies that can be used to promote student access? Firstly is inclusive admissions and flexible entry pathways, where we are looking into multiple entry routes, where we are looking into recognizing mature entry as a strategy that we can make use of. Having different entries in a single year, you have maybe twice entries. Financial access and affordability strategies, where cost is the biggest global barrier, and it is encouraging that universities must have quite a number of scholarships targeting underrepresented groups. Should they have work study programs where students are given an opportunity to work and get some money to pay for their fees. Flexible fee payment plans, again, partnerships with industry and government sponsorships. So when we talk of partnerships, universities must have partnerships that go to the extent of even supporting students to succeed in their studies. Then geographic and community outreach, very critical. Universities must go to the students. We want to address disadvantaged students. Where are they? Majority of them, you find them in rural areas, especially in Africa. You find them. Universities must go to the students, must have satellite campuses, community-based recruitment. Let us go there. Yes, we do have digital transformation, but some they do not know how to apply online. Let us go and with our hard copies so that they apply. Let us teach them to apply. Rural and marginalized community targeting, which is very critical, where we are targeting the bottom of the pyramid. Then from the leadership perspective, it emerges that vision and mission alignment are very critical. When we're talking of vision and mission, we're looking what the university wants to be. So respondents consistently emphasize that the integration of equity into institutional strategy begins with the articulation of a clear and inclusive vision. If we look into our vision, does it take into account the equity as part of its strategy? So leaders from high-performing universities, they reported that when access and success are anchored in the institutional mission, it sets a tone for systematic transformation. You know, when I interviewed one vice chancellor, he explained that equity is not a project, it's our identity as a university. Every strategic plan, from curriculum reform to student support, must echo that commitment. Therefore, universities that lacked such alignment treated equity as a compliance exercise, often dependent on external donor funding or temporary leadership enthusiasm. This we must avoid. So the key performance indicators should be linked to retention, should be linked to completion and employability, not just enrollments. Another key factor that emerged was distributed leadership and capacity building, very critical. Interviewees highlighted that sustainable equity transformation, it requires leadership beyond the top office. Majority of the respondents described a shift from centralized to distributed models of leadership, where responsibility for inclusion was shared across faculties and administrative units. One director of student affairs stated that our biggest shift was realizing that equity is everyone's job, not just the equity office. Every dean, every head of academic department has to lead inclusion within their space. Respondents also emphasized capacity building as a strategic enabler. Capacity building is important. So what do we need now? We need leadership development programs. We need workshops on inclusive pedagogy. We need gender mainstreaming training, which were cited as effective tools that we must make use of. Digital competencies tools. Remember, we are in the era of fourth industrial revolution. One senior administrator noted, we invested in leadership coaching because the mindset change before systems do. Therefore, you cannot build inclusive systems with exclusive thinking. So, therefore, capacity building, very critical. Then again, data-informed decision-making. Data emerged as a powerful instrument that as universities must make use of for diagnosing inequities and guiding our interventions. Respondents described the use of equity dashboards and predictive analytics to monitor student performance and progression. A registrar from one university explained that we disaggregate all our data in terms of gender, in terms of socioeconomic background, and that's how we know who is doing well and who is silently slipping through the cracks. Another participant emphasized that data transparency drives accountability. When everyone sees the numbers, the conversation changes from excuses to solutions. So numbers matters. So these practices confirm the view of Benson that equity-minded institutions use data not merely for reporting, but as a transformative tool to redesign systems and pedagogy. Collaborative governance and stakeholder engagement becomes another strategy that we must make use of. Collaboration emerged as a decisive factor in embedding equity institution-wide. Most cases involved multi-stakeholder governance structures, such as equity councils, transformation committees, or student partnership boards. So we need to have these boards if we do not have. One vice chancellor noted that we cannot design inclusion for students. We must design it with them, co-create solutions, applying that design thinking in coming up with solutions. So inclusion becomes authentic. Another respondent described collaboration with local communities as a strategic enabler. He said, we have partnerships with the rural schools to prepare learners for university culture. Inclusion starts long before enrollment. It starts from aspiration. Such partnerships highlight how universities can act as a catalyst for broader social inclusion. Lastly is accountability and evaluation mechanisms. The results from the study reveals that accountability structures are the backbone of institutional sustainability. Universities that monitor the progress using clear performance indicators and annual reviews showed measurable improvement in terms of student outcomes. One respondent highlighted that we included diversity and inclusion objectives in every manager's performance appraisal. If it's not measured, it won't move. That was the response. So do we have such inclusion objectives in performance appraisals of our directors, senior management? For instance, one university vice chancellors, some institutions established annual equity awards, recognizing departmental staff, demonstrating innovative inclusion practices. One university introduced a vice chancellor's award for inclusive teaching, which incentivized pedagogical innovations supporting students with disabilities. Respondents agreed that public reporting of progress was a game changer. A senior equity officer stated that when we publish our equity report, it tells the public we are serious in terms of equity. It keeps the university honest. Such measures embed equity within institutional culture and made progress visible and measurable. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude this, leading for equity is about raising institutional responsibility, knowing our mission and vision. It is about designing universities that recognize diversity as a strength, not as a weakness, and student success as a shared obligation rather than an individual struggle. As leaders and policymakers, the way forward is clear. We must reimagine access as a continuum that begins before admission and ends with graduation and meaningful participation in society. So we're looking into impact, not just a graduation certificate, but impact at the end of the day. What must we do now? We must align our institutional missions, our funding models, our leadership incentives with equity and success outcomes. And we must move from isolated interventions to war of institutional strategies, supported by evidence, supported by data, as well as courageous leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of higher education will not be determined by how many students we admit, but by how many we enable to succeed, the impact that we are going to make. I thank you.
Thanks, Josh, for the presentation, and your passion clearly for the topic came through as well. But also, I think what some of the things you highlighted in there around equity is not a project; it's our identity as an institution. There's a lot of good quotes in there, which we will come to at the end of everyone's presentation, and probably take a more deep dive and ask, ask some more questions around it. But noting of the time, we'll move to our next presenter. So we now have Mike Bennett, whose topic is around co-creation in action, building Africa's first online transnational foundation program. So over to you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you very much, and yeah, thanks to Josh as well for that wonderful first presentation. And I think picking up on some of those themes as well as I talk through what we've been up to with this particular project. So, hi everyone. My name's Mike Bennett from King's College London, and it's a real pleasure to share with you today our ongoing work in developing a fully online transnational foundation program, which is a project emerging from our Afe Babalola Centre for Transnational Education. And this presentation today is going to outline a bit about the vision and the structure of the centre, describe our research with young people across 3 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and then discuss the implications for inclusive, scalable, and online foundation education. So as Josh was saying in his remarks, education being the great equalizer, as he called it. I think, as I say, we pick up on some of those themes here. What I'd also say is this is a project that was funded by a donor, and I know Josh mentioned this in his remarks. What I would say around that is sometimes you need a donation almost as a catalyst to innovate. You need a reason to drive change, and then sometimes a small project like this can then spread across not just your institution, but across the sector, which is what we're obviously hoping to do here. So the centre was established through this £10 million philanthropic gift from Afe Babalola, who is a distinguished Nigerian lawyer and academic. And that vision was really founded on the belief that education could be transformative, that it could empower Africa's young people to become community leaders, innovators, agents of change. And our aspiration is to reach 1 million learners through online and blended pathways, and really act as a bridge between secondary education, university, and employment. So this work is framed by a broader challenge, as I've noted there, that in sub-Saharan Africa, there's approximately 1 university for every 1 million residents. That capacity gap is vast, and digital delivery provides one of the few realistic means to be able to address that. However, if online is part of the solution, we must find a way that is accessible and inclusive. So here's our donor and alumnus, Afe Babalola, who has long argued that education is the panacea to ignorance, to poverty, to extremism. And his vision aligns closely with King's mission to advance knowledge for the benefit of society. He urges us to fight against the status quo as one joined up team, to combine academic rigor with social purpose. And so almost this partnership has become for us not simply a financial investment, but a philosophical alignment, a shared commitment of social justice, employability, and leadership development for underserved youth. And so strategy, it's a portfolio made up of phase 1, recently in September last year, a postgraduate certificate in online learning and teaching designed to build capacity of educators across the continent to design and deliver high quality online programs. Phase 2, a suite of short courses providing transferable skills such as digital literacy, problem solving, workplace communication for young people preparing to enter higher education or employment. And phase 3, launching in later 2026, the program in applied health. Transnational bridging pathway to health release and community-based careers. So regulator approval, we'll have this content, this program, our university partners on the continent, with the postgraduate certificate acting as that license to teach the program. And together, we hope that these 3 pillars will constitute something of a stackable ecosystem of online learning for young people and educators in Africa. So turning to the latest research project, that's the subject of my presentation today. The aims of this were threefold. So one, the first-hand perspective, young people wish to learn fully online, and success in online helping. The third, to inform the design of inclusive, centered student support. So we really wanted to not merely ask the young people what they wanted, but to position them as co-researchers, co-designers, intervention. Methodology, we adopted a participatory action research framework between June and September last year. We convened a series of workshops with young people in Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya. Each session was structured around tasks that invited participants to reflect, to write, to discuss their experiences. So in addition to the written outputs, facilitators took detailed field notes, we captured informal conversations and those spontaneous reflections. And so that approach combined, I think it's given us a really multi-layered understanding of how these young people conceptualize learning, motivation, and opportunity. So the workshops themselves, we have 57 participants who represented a diverse socioeconomic, educational, and technological context from rural communities to major urban centres. And we worked with our NGO and university partners on the ground to recruit this sample. The cohort included secondary school pupils, current foundation students, recent alumni. And importantly, we try to balance that representation across gender, income levels, to the type of school that these young people were gone to, ensuring that the findings reflect the diversity of the target population. So I'm going to turn now to the outcomes. There's many more than what I'm going to present here, but it gives you a sense of what we found. So 89% of the participants had access to a smartphone, which was really important outcome for us, while just much less, 58%, could access a laptop either at home or in their wider community. So it's clear that mobile first is going to be important. Most prefer to study alone in quiet spaces, such as a classroom or a library, while others value the flexibility of home or outdoor environments. And I think, again, what Josh was saying about utilising the community hubs locally is, again, going to be critical. In terms of platforms, YouTube dominated overwhelmingly as a learning tool, followed by WhatsApp, Telegram, TikTok, highlighting the centrality of those mobile-first, low-bandwidth tools. And 54% using ChatGPT regularly, even as we found to make decisions in their social lives. And participants named 18 different AI platforms that they're using regularly. So what are the enablers to online learning? So mentoring, relationships, and support networks came through so strongly. These are parents, teachers, peers, to enable and sustain learning. Access to reliable, stable internet connections, flexible pacing that accommodates those domestic responsibilities, the right space to learn, and that self-discipline and resilience to keep going when times are hard. Collectively, as we felt, and in context aware learning ecosystems, the rule book of that was probably turning to they were mainly, as you might expect, the opposite, including things like high data costs, internet access, limited parental, and actually acceptance of from parents. That looked like it was going to be an important participation. Concentration in isolation, anxiety around competing priorities, and often able to engage with teachers or peers. So these findings point to the social infrastructure, digital communities, to build that confidence and credibility. We asked the participants and rank different learners to understand what they wanted to see more frequently. And the participants activities such as short videos, interactive quizzes, research tasks, the higher independent tasks, things experiencing. Also wanted to engage in small group webinars with the teacher, with each other, and mentoring, coaching, and discussing opportunities to discuss with each other are absolutely key. They were less sure about creative tasks, submitting assignments in other formats, such as like blogs, voice notes, posters, and they weren't quite at the stage of really grasping the importance of building relationships with future employers at this sort of early stage of their academic lives. So looking at the perceptions of summative assessment, we asked them to consider summative assessment, working out on an axis what could be more important to their future careers and what they would need more support from the teachers to do well. So valued activities that were authentic and applied. So they really wanted presentations well. They knew that this was going to be important to them, but also project. However, the assessments also, because they run earlier, and part of they were used to doing a lot of multiple choice exams, a staple of journeys at school. And it kind of highlights a pedagogical challenge for us of how to design assessment for learning that remains rigorous and relevant for them, but yet scaffolded for for learners who are new to this sort of diverse assessment. So, implications for program design, drawing these findings together to summarize. We first of structured academic-led content underpinned by quizzes, short tasks to ensure coherence and parity across the context. Flexibility to engagement is going to be vital, blending asynchronous learning, live webinars to accommodate constraints. The teacher has to be mobile first with responsive layouts. The students need access though to laptop, and it's our job to they can get them. Fourth, mentoring must be built into a supported component of the journey. Mentoring is there's quite a lot in this, and it's going to require one-to-one check-ins on a weekly basis. Fifth, assessment design must be authentic and varied, but with significant scaffolding, and then embedding employer links within the assessment to counter those instrumental attitudes and emphasize broader professional and civic learning outcomes. So in summary, we've got this part of the study really helps us to provide some granular insight into how young people across sub-Saharan Africa conceive online learning, the opportunities, the barriers, the potential, and now we're working very, very hard with our across our academic team to build ensure that these findings are translated into the Foundation Certificate in Applied Health, which launches this September, when we're going to go on to evaluate the impact through a longitudinal mixed methods research study. So yeah, thanks for your time, and yeah, looking forward to questions later in the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And that was a really insightful presentation, especially some of the outcomes and the summary of those outcomes, I think was quite interesting, especially around mobile access and employer-led activities and stuff. So we can unpick some of the questions down there later. Moving on to our third presenters. So this presentation is around tackling educational disadvantage, a city perspective. A warm welcome to Karen Duke, Barry O'Connor, and Dennis Barrett as well. Over to you for the presentation.
Thank you, Sonal, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you a model of practice that we have tried for a number of years in Cork, and we think can offer a different way of looking at the question of how do you tackle educational disadvantage from a city perspective. I liked very much some of the quotes and the perspectives that Joshua shared with us earlier, that inclusion starts long before enrollment. And that's an understanding we share in Cork. But I also liked Mike's question that he asked, where do you learn best? In which environment do you learn best? So we've taken an approach over many years in Cork City in Ireland that the city, to borrow a phrase from our partners overseas, the city is a classroom without walls. So the city offers opportunities for all citizens to learn. And we've taken that in a very serious way as a partnership approach. Our journey as a learning city goes back quite a number of years to 2002. And we really are building on the shoulders of giants, very far-sighted city leaders, the president of university, chief executive of our education board at that time, really cemented the idea that the learning city was a possibility for Cork. To give a sense of our scale, Cork is 225,000 in its population in the immediate city region. We are a harbour city, and while we are small in some respects in an international sense, we are very united. And I think you'll hear from our chair, Dr. Barry O'Connor, later. Barry describes Cork as a Goldilocks city. The nursery around Goldilocks and the three bears, not too big, not too small, just right. So Cork, we feel, is just right. Large enough to have a global outlook and to be quite ambitious, but small enough so that the key partners can all get to know each other very well and can learn to work together. So our credentials as a learning city are based on a UNESCO model, but that's not the only example of how we work together, bringing an inter-agency partnership and a cross-sectoral approach. So our agencies, through hard work well together, but we bring not just the public bodies, we also bring the private sector and the non-governmental sector. Our community and our voluntary partners are all brought together to make our city a UNESCO learning city, which we're proud to be since 2013, and a WHO accredited healthy city since 2009. In 2005, Cork was selected to be European Capital of Culture, and we are very proud of our own cultural models and institutions and our sense of our own identity. And also under the WHO designation, we're an age-friendly city. So in all of these respects and in a lot of the innovations and projects that we undertake, we take that partnership approach. So looking back to the ambitions of our founder, really the visionaries of 2002, they set out to make Cork a city where access to education was available for all levels and to all ages in the city. And we have taken that a step further by saying it's a priority for all ages, all interests, and all abilities. Back then, they also set out an ambition that we would recognise in our efforts all stakeholders in education, the formal partners, non-formal partners, so learning through adult education, through community-based programs, etc., but also learning through informal partners. So activity of any kind where there's a learning element, even if it's not part of the core mission, that those partners are also recognised and are an important element when you're bringing a whole city together. So in all of these ways, we have sought to make our city a cultural place where a culture of lifelong learning has been embedded and that is available to all citizens. In various ways over the years, then we have implemented that through various projects. As a city, we always say that a learning city is what a learning city does. So while we're a recognised UNESCO learning city and we fulfil the criteria for that, any city has the potential to be a learning city. Most cities have a university, have many schools, have many early years education centres. But if You can bring those partners together to do something different, something new, something that adds value to each other's efforts, such as access to higher education, something that doesn't duplicate, then you're delivering as a learning city, in our view. So some of the examples that have been a success for us in striving to achieve these ambitions over the years include our Lifelong Learning Festival, which has been recognized globally as a model of best practice by UNESCO. And I always remind myself to invite any audience to come to Cork during our festival, because we feel that it's the best opportunity we can show you and prove to you how these activities are working. So this year it's on April 22nd to the 29th, and you're all welcome to come. Long distance from Australia, Sonal, but you know, we've had Australian visitors before. Peter Cairns, for example, who was involved with the Pascal Observatory, a university-based partnership. Peter gave us this idea of a learning neighbourhood and taking the partnership approach at local level by bringing local partners together, schools, early years centres, community centres, libraries, our men's shed, which is another Australian idea. All the partners are welcome, and they develop their own area as an improved space for lifelong learning. And the example we're going to share with you today is the Cork Access Network, which was an initiative, again, bringing partners together to really dig down at the issue of educational disadvantage. And that was a priority for us ever since we hosted the UNESCO conference on learning cities in 2017. The theme of the conference was Global Goals, Local Actions. The outcome of the conference was a commitment for us as a learning city to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 4, as you may know, is looking to develop equitable education and lifelong learning for all. And an underpinning principle is leave no one behind. And you'll see as I hand over now to Dr. Barry O'Connor that that's really the foundation stones of our access network. I will share these slides with anyone who wishes to take these ideas further, but there are other examples of how we work together, including the linkages and the networks we have developed with other learning cities on the island of Ireland and internationally. But I might ask our chair, Dr. Barry O'Connor, who, as president of one of our 4 pillar organisations, one of the universities in our city, so we have 2 universities. I'm speaking to you today from Cork City Council, and the 4th leg of our table, if you like, is our education board. But Barry, as president of Cork Institute of Technology, has always been an advocate for equity in higher education. And when he was stepping down as president, he was immediately willing to step into the role as chair of Cork Access Network as we found our early few steps and teased out what that could be. So I want to pay tribute to Barry for taking that leadership role and for being such a powerful advocate for equity in access, and hand over to him now.
Right, thank you very much, Dennis, and good morning from America, actually. So good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are yourselves. I must say, I must compliment Josh on his sketching out of the very broad canvas that is access and, as he says, success in higher education. And thanks to Dennis as well there for the kind words. I mean, going back to our UNESCO conference, where we had, I think, 90 mayors of cities from all around the world, one of the bylines we had was local action, global impact. And maybe through this session and other sessions with the WAHEN network, again, I think that is a way forward from the point of view of WAHEN, that examples that are happening, be it in Australia or Zimbabwe or Ireland, can be picked up by other people to adjust the great injustice that is access and indeed success in higher education. So we established the Cork Access Network right at the back end of 2020, in the middle of COVID. Nothing like a double challenge to get people excited. So we began, as the slide says there, with the formal and the formal education bodies in our city, which was University College Cork, Munster Technological University, the Cork Education and Training Board, which actually handles both a second level and post-secondary education, what we call further education and training. And again, I'll come back to this. The other key partner we had was the Cork City Council, or local municipal authority, because again, as we all know, because we wouldn't be involved in this business otherwise, part of the problem with educational institutions is that they tend to be behind walls, and you cannot access is very difficult to get in there, not to mind saying to succeed. So having these city basically hosting our Cork Access Network has opened all these gates, broken down these walls, and allowed access, well, allowed the beginnings of access to education, because as all the studies will have shown, you know, we're actually running to stand still in terms of access to education and further the success of students who we do admit into education. So basically, that's where we stood back in 2020. We then developed the network onwards, including local industry and industry leaders, and indeed local trade unions as well, national trade unions. So basically, what are we? We're a network. We're actually interesting from the point of view that, generally speaking, we do not deliver education ourselves as the network, but we have a partnership, we have a network of resources that we share between members and outside of the network. It's an open network. And the key objective is to tackle educational disadvantage wherever it may be. And as I mentioned, we've got our 4 central partners, City Council, the 2 universities, and the Further Education and Training Board, or as is now known, the Cork College of Further Education and Training. And basically how we function is we get together usually on a quarterly basis, depending on how busy we might be or upcoming events. And we form into subgroups to deliver seminars, deliver events, deliver networking occasions. And so it's a task-based operation. And from that point of view, what we also do then, we reach out to other active teaching or education or training units or networks or resources so that we can share these resources properly. And again, just as the slide says there, we kind of took our aim on a strength-based approach to education, right? That is to say, we looked at what resources we have in our Goldilocks city, as Dennis said, and we've seen what resources we have, and try and make these more available to everybody in the city and beyond, indeed. And it's that idea of trying to identify what we have and work on it. Again, listening to Mike's very interesting presentation there, we are really trying to change the institutions, or at least change how the institutions interact with potential students, potential learners, and that is key to us. As we mentioned, then we had, I think Karen will talk more about it later. We also look at community education, education in the workplace, formal and non-formal education, both higher level education and secondary level education. So it's important from our point of view also that we bring in the learner. And on the first slide we had there, we have our motto, if you like, which is leaving no one behind. But there's also the piece in front of that is it's Gaelic, it's Irish, is Féad or Lat. That is to say that you can do it. You as a learner can do it. Because we can have all the schemes in the world, but the learner herself or himself must also invest in the learning process. So it's a two-way street. It's co-creation. It's the partnership with the learner. So we make the resources available. We highlight what resources are there, but we also encourage the learner to get involved in terms of putting a bit of effort into learning, developing a new skill or whatever. And that is So we got the learner right the way through to the institutions, to City Hall, to the trade unions and so on, and to leading industry, because as Dennis says, a learning city is key. And on that slide there, you see where we are. It is about collaboration. And it's also a fact that, we might get a bunch of 2 or 3 leaders in education in a particular city who are interested in driving on with improving access to education. No, that's all fine. But if there's a change in leadership or a change in the direction of leadership, then we got to start all over again. And I would say fair play to us. We're in year 6 now of our Cork Access Network. We've had a number of changes in terms of leadership, in terms of personnel and personalities indeed on the network. But we're still managing to survive. We're still managing to develop. Why? Because the enthusiasm coming from the learners, be it community-based or university-based or school-based, is always going to energize us. But also by sharing with minority groups who are challenged, by sharing with those our resources, our expertise, we are developing more and more people who are interested in organising education for themselves and in following education. So, just maybe to finish up before handing over to Karen, as you say, that collaboration is key, because that keeps the dynamism going. It is then not depending on me or Dennis or Karen or anyone else. If we've got a good network, enthusiastic about what's happening and what resources can be made available, can be developed, then the future is sound. It's not going to solve the problem. But, as I say, we are, as we say very often, running to stand still. And when COVID hit, that was a particular challenge for people with disadvantages in terms of getting into education or even succeeding in education. So there are always challenges coming up. And even if we had no challenges, there is the persistent challenge of socioeconomic disadvantage, of people living in rural communities and so on. So the cause is great, but the results are equally great. And it does come back down to the individual learner. But for us, collaboration with the institutions, with the learners, is key. And I hand over to Karen. So thank you for listening. Just to say, in terms of our point of view, we are very willing, as Dennis said, to share and to collaborate with colleagues locally, nationally, or globally, in terms of us learning from colleagues who are following the same lines ourselves, or contributing to their development. So over to Karen. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Barry. And it was very interesting for me to come on here because we had a really busy morning before this, and it was a CAN event. We work in partnership with our own Indigenous community here, Sonal, so I was really pleased to hear you acknowledge yours. So we have a group of people, Irish travellers. I'm not sure if you would be familiar. But they had a traveller education conference for the second time, supported by CAN. But the model we use for that event is we are supportive partners. It's traveller led. It's their gig. We are just a piece of the machine that helps them deliver, but they get access to City Hall and the strength of all our partners. And that's one of the beautiful things about the model. So in the context of the city, we're able to be a conduit of support from our big partners. Like Barry is a senior, prestigious person, so is Dennis, even though he both carry it quite lightly now, but they both have a bit of gravitas in the city. But to have them to be so willing to share their influence and their position and their knowledge from years working in the system, and to do it in such a way then that we can provide support to those groups without swallowing them up. It's a way to utilise the power that lies in the learning city. So CAN works on the 4 pillars of access, further and higher education, community education, schools and work, and the workplace. So we just do different events, and I'll just give a little bit of an explanation of how we actually do it and what the actions are. So we have a community education annual seminar. So our partner from the Education and Training Board administers a fund called REACH. It reaches, and like its name, it reaches people who often are harder to reach when it comes to education. It's informal and non-formal in its activity. So their community education partners deliver it. We create an event, we co-create an event with our partners that allows REACH recipients to showcase best practice with the impact of the fund. It also gives people who create policy to come and present the policy. It's disseminated by the experts in the area, and then we get feedback and use that feedback then to answer that policy and to inform that policy going forward. So it's a way to use the strength of the CAN network again to access people at the highest levels, you know, so we are that conduit. So we had a very successful second one there now recently, and we're in the middle of creating the second submission to the policy. So if you want to scan that there, you can get the first one. You'll see some very interesting quotes from participants, and very much like Joshua said, access, a very strong finding from that was access begins much before people sit in the classroom. And even though Cork is a much different scale to some of the projects mentioned, the things are the same. Transport, financial barriers, you know, these things are universal. I think the barriers are very translatable, and the answers can be transferable as well, I think. So this is just last year's traveller education seminar. We just came off the second annual one today. So we were a bit high coming away because it was really positive, you know. So that we're just off the second one. But again, we use that. The networking and sharing event is a different model. That's smaller. We keep it to small numbers, but we bring people from the partner organisations together to meet each other so that they can have the opportunity to develop relationships, so they can collaborate better. So we know that there are really strong pathways there to education, but collaborating together and understanding what each other does allows us to put patches on the pathway so that those who don't exactly fit the criteria might get support through the relationships developed by the other professionals in the field. And the last one is an event that we host on an annual basis. I think that there have been 4 or 5 of these now. They're very successful. They're you bring an employer who's engaging with an education program and an education provider to a nice venue. They get to showcase their practice, showcase the model that works, but we also get the students' voice and their lived experience. There was a story of people replicating the model and other people succeeding, and then they came back to speak of it, you know. So it's working really well. So I'm conscious we might have gone over a little bit there, but I'm very proud to be associated with Cork Access Network. I think it does really good work, and I do think it's a model that can be replicated. So thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Dennis, and thanks, Barry. I mean, it will be good to get the slides. I think there's a lot in there as well. So moving on to our next presenters, I'll hand over to Alex and Cecilia to start their presentation.
Thanks very much. We'll endeavour to be succinct since I think we're overrunning a bit. Our presentation dovetails with the previous presentations, but also shifts the focus a bit. And it comes from the think tank for the social mission of universities, which is part of the S Group European Universities Network. The network comprises 46 institutions across and beyond Europe and has a think tank academy which looks at various pressing issues for higher education today. We're going to be talking about the work of our particular think tank with Cecilia Christensen and Alex Hughes from the universities of Malmö and Westminster, and we work on the think tank with Adina Fodor from the University of Babeş-Bolyai. So, as its name suggests, our think tank is concerned with social mission in higher education. That's to say, with the socially responsive and socially responsible engagements that universities enact to address social challenges and enhance social good. And some of these engagements happen just within universities through, for example, widening participation work. But they happen much more productively when they happen in environments where students and academics and administrative colleagues work with external stakeholders, societal partners, to produce collaborative work that's aimed at social change. And we've heard some great examples of that in today's presentation. So social mission in higher education is pretty complex and multifaceted. It brings together stakeholders with different experiences, different knowledges, different needs, different relations to social context. It looks very different in different regional and national contexts. We've just heard a fantastic example from Cork of what a very region and city specific social enterprise work looks like. Social mission work is driven by attention to areas of societal challenge, including those characterised by inequality, conflict and exclusion. It's not easy to deliver. And what we think we don't have very much of at the moment are really effective blueprints to help societal partners and universities deliver it really well. So to come back a bit to our think tank, started its work in 2022. And we started off by surveying member universities within the S group to see how they were delivering social mission work. We got some really good survey responses, and they identified key focuses such as EDI work, social and community engagement, ethics, sustainability, and sustainable development. And most of our survey responses positioned the UN SDGs as a primary driver of social mission in higher education. The survey, and this is on our slides, Sissy, I think if you might be having difficulty sharing them, but the survey report is available on the Social Mission Think Tank section of the S Group website. And it identified, the survey, this is a number of things that are relevant to the discussion today. It captured lots of good practice. You can see this in the report. It also suggested, and we heard this in the last presentation, that social mission work can entail difficulties because universities and social partners work differently and work differently together. And the survey responses also pointed to key areas where social mission practice impacts really positively on the student experience and on student success and enhances teaching and learning. And these areas of good practice and impact include the development of socially responsive curricula, the development of learning grounded in real-world issues, and collaborative working with employers, industry, community, and social groups. So in other words, our survey suggested that educational excellence can and absolutely should be delivered through the lens of social impact. Now, I'm going to stop doing the introductory blurb and hand over to Sissy to talk about a particular development we created to help us better understand social mission. So over to you, Sissy.
And I'm sorry, I cannot get my slide here. Do you have your presentation available there, or can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you. So maybe you should stop sharing your screen, and if Imogen and them can fix it, but if you want to continue,
I don't know.
Presentation.
I would like to have the presentation there. I don't know if I can see that. Yeah. Do you see the presentation here, or you
we
just
don't see the presentation? We see your screen. You on the screen.
Yeah. Could you please then share the presentation then?
Imogen, do you want to try sharing?
Yeah. Thank you. And could you go to slide 3, Imogen? Sorry about this, everybody. Yes. We've been dogged by technical difficulties today.
What will success education webinar will be without a technological challenge?
Indeed.
To put it into context. Go ahead, Alex.
Actually, I'm handing over to Sissy now to talk about something particular.
I'm not I cannot see you at all here now. So, Alex, do you think you can continue here, or should
sure, absolutely. Imogen, thank you for sharing the slides. If I can ask you to move them on when it's time to move them on, I will do.
Recording in progress.
Oh, goodness me, there's a very weird echo. Anyway.
Okay. This is strange. Can you hear me?
Sissy, I think you better switch off and let me do it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so guys, I was talking about the survey of good practice around social mission that we did through the S Group. And when we had a look at the results of that survey, we decided that what we would do was to create a conversation series called Engagements, dedicated to further exploring this area, this key area in higher education, that's to say social mission. The engagement series has run since April 2024 as physical and online meetings. And as you can see from the slide, we've had a particular set of topics that we've addressed. The 6 of them are there. It's continuing in 2026. And the series is intended to share thinking about challenges, opportunities and impact, and to create a space where colleagues from within the S Group and from other partner universities can work together to discuss and enhance innovative approaches to the role of universities as agents of and partners in social change. So could we go on to slide 4, please? Or the next slide. Thank you very much. So engagements has enabled us to really understand that we've got to start rethinking the social relevance of universities. Universities used to talk about third mission, but that's a very limiting context and it needs to be elaborated on, both from the academic perspective and the social and community perspective. Universities can no longer be seen as isolated institutions with a few priorities to the surrounding society. They need to be understood as inclusive and responsible and collaborative actors working with society and working on collaborative projects dedicated to delivering societal improvement for the common good. So the engagement series across the last 2 years have raised some very relevant questions on how to promote universities to become agents of social transformation. And these questions are paramount. You can see them appearing on the screen. What do we consider knowledge to be, and how is it shaped and by whom? How do we recognise students as partners who bring valuable experiences to education and to social mission? How do we provide learning for readiness to act in socially responsive ways? How do we set up co-creative collaborations and co-creation of knowledge with societal partners to develop knowledge and learning and innovation for the social good? And how, finally, can global relations between academia and communities, societal actors and universities promote building a society of justice, equality, diversity and inclusion? Now, these are questions that have come up all the way through all the presentations, and they are very central to thinking around social mission work. If we can go on to the next slide, please. So, the work we've been doing in our very tiny think tank and our engagement series and through our survey has basically highlighted how educational excellence is achievable and achieved when universities embed systematically social impact goals through teaching, learning and extracurricular activity. This shouldn't be seen as a supplementary part-time activity. It's a core mechanism, and it's a mechanism that supports quality assurance and quality enhancement. As we've heard from pretty much everybody who spoke today, it's aligned with global drivers such as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 4. And it's absolutely aligned with issues of equity, inclusion, student success. Our survey respondents, our speakers in our engagement series have identified a number of ways in which social mission can be really well embedded in educational provision to enhance excellence and render teaching and student learning much more enabling and much more inclusive. One of these involves the creation of curricula that recognises students' diverse backgrounds, integrating issues such as equality, sustainability and human rights, and raising the relevance and quality of learning experiences. And that kind of integration is made systematic by incorporating principles like sustainability, EDI, digital education into programme development process and evaluation process. So this has to be structural and made structural. Another example of social mission-driven excellence entails using strategic institutional mandates to require that all programmes have sustainability as a learning outcome, with associated student skills development and graduate attributes grounded in international frameworks such as the SDGs and green competence. Innovative practices, I think we're going on to the next slide now, please, sorry. So innovative practices such as green action planning, the use of rigorous evaluation tools, and co-creation with students and external partners were likewise identified as ways to embed social impact and raise the standard of education offered in HEIs. Such processes include and support service learning and challenge-based projects that entail partnerships with civic, industry and community organisations, link classroom work to real-world problems, and refresh and enhance educational provision. So to conclude, our work on social mission and higher education, and that's come through the survey, it's come through engagements, has confirmed our sense of 4 things, and they've really been reinforced in today's session, actually. The first thing is that clarity of where social mission work sits within institutional strategies, robust monitoring systems, and dedicated resources are all absolutely essential if social mission work is going to achieve real sustained impact and real sustained educational improvement for colleagues and students. Second thing is that strong and ongoing communication of social mission benefits is absolutely critical within universities to staff and student bodies to ensure that social mission activity is developed, delivered, and embedded really purposefully. Third thing is that the realisation of such activity has to involve authentic engagement with societal stakeholders. We've heard some really great examples of that today. If that engagement isn't authentic, if it isn't grounded in shared, real, meaningful tasks and goals, it's not going to be a meaningful part of the university. So all of those things, proper systems, communication, and authentic engagement are really, really critical to delivering effective, impactful social mission work. But I think the thing that we found, our 4th learning point, and probably the most important learning point, is that engagement with societal partners is most effective when it's 2-way, dialogic, and grounded in understanding of and respect for difference. This is not an easy thing to do, to work with external bodies. We've heard mention of that throughout the presentations we've heard before. But it's critically important, and it's going to work at best when there's equitable collaboration, not condescension. And for that to happen, we need to devise much better roadmaps, much better blueprints that enable universities and societal partners to work together, to collaborate effectively, create new knowledges, create impactful learning, and above all, create social change. And I think that's all we want to say. Sorry about the technical issues and that being a bit of a gallop, but I hope we've sort of caught up on a bit of time and also got across what we've been working on over the last couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Cecilia, as well. That was a great presentation, and it sort of resonated with some of the work we've been doing here in Australia at UTS, where I'm from. We've been working on a social impact framework to articulate the social justice agenda by mapping out the focus areas and defining where and how we measure our impact on social justice outcomes. So very keen to sort of follow up on your presentation later on. With time, we've got time for probably one question, which I'll probably throw out to everyone to get your insight in. Several presentations today talked about leadership, institutional strategy, commitments. I think from your experience, everyone will be just keen to understand what effective leadership and structural change is needed when it comes to genuinely shifting access and student success outcomes. So how do we move from intent into making sure that we do drive that strategy implementation? Like, what is needed? Is leadership enough? Institutional strategies enough? Like, what is needed to move beyond intent? Because I think in the equity space, we see a lot of good intent, but not meaningful impact and outcomes. So what, from your perspective, is needed? So I'll probably start off with Denise and Karen, if you guys want to, and Barry, if you guys want to jump on that.
Thanks, Sonal, and thanks to all the presenters for today's session, Alex, Ceci, I think Alex called you, Mike and Joshua. A lot of food for thought. I would offer again an example from Cork, and I'd welcome Barry's reflections also, and Karen would like to add to something I'm going to say. For us to sustain our progress in improving access, improving the pathways, as Karen mentioned, pathways, progression pathways, and the patches on those pathways. So to ensure nobody slips through the cracks. An initiative that has worked well for us is a memorandum of understanding. So in 2015, after over 10 years of working on our Lifelong Learning Festival, the core partners, the two universities, the Education Board, which, as Barry explained, deals with further education, adult education, community-based education, youth services. So very important partner because it reaches into lots of parts of our city and our city council. So the leadership at that time in 2015 signed a long-standing MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, that didn't have an end date. And then, as Barry explained, leadership has changed, but the MOU has remained. So even though a new chief executive, a new president might have a new priority, the institution has committed to work with partners as equal partners to drive the city being a lifelong learning city, a city which promotes access to learning opportunities. So that's my own thoughts on it. I don't know, Karen?
My observation since I joined CAN, I'm in the post for about a year and a half, I suppose, and what I found really interesting and valuable about the CAN steering group, the network, which has cross-sectoral partners. So we have people from the different universities, the city council, the trade unions, as Barry said, and also industry, you know, and everyone's idea of access. We might say the same word, but we mean different things. And it is clarifying what we mean by student success, clarifying what we mean by access. And we might disagree, but if we all agree on a kind of more general, we want people to have better quality lives, and education as a tool for that would be where we're coming from, it, the social inclusion aspect and the equality agenda. So we know that's what we can agree on, even if we do disagree on other aspects, because we're coming and using very different lenses. So for the sustainability of it, it is to have that empathy and compassion for your partner, to make that an equal space, that the things we disagree on are minute, but the things we agree on are what we focus on, you know. So I think that's one of the strengths of CAN. It's the respect for the other's opinion, even when it's in real life, that's not easy all the time, you know. So it's like, it's to create that safe psychological space for partners to be able to address their issues.
Thanks, Karen. Mike, you know, with the work that you've been doing, what do you see? And especially, I'm also interested in your reflection on sustainability and scalability of some of the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe just I'll just respond as well to that first point. So I think the two things at King's College come to mind as well around. One being I think the culture for access. I think it does start at the top. I absolutely agree. Leadership is really important, but the culture of the institution. I'm sure many of us have worked in different institutions, and you see the difference in culture, and the approach to access can be very different. And then secondly, at the moment, it's about money, isn't it? I mean, the sector is not the easiest place for the sector at the moment. King's College, we're in a situation where we're in surplus. There's not many universities that are, and ultimately senior leaders are making decisions about funding. And if we don't watch it, these will go down to the bottom of the list. So we have to make sure that we're able to make a case around academic outcomes that also supports this wider agenda. But yeah, as far as our projects in Africa is concerned, yes, sustainability is massively important. That's why we think you build capacity. You don't run a project like this from London. The sooner we can get the project out of London and into the African continent, the better.
Yeah, Barry.
Yeah, just very briefly, Sana, to respond to Mike there, I think, you know, we are all access and equity practitioners around this computer this morning. I think the conversation and that work must continue, but access and student success should be part of the political agenda, the political conversation. And again, to Mike's point, it's really important that, you know, that access and success and equity is not something nice to have. It should be something central to what we do. The conversation of leadership, of government people and politicians should be identifying the economic, the political, and the social capital, social benefit of access and success in education. So we need to continue doing our work, but we also need to get the information out to the people who set the agenda, including the economists and the accountants. Thanks, Sonal.
Yeah. And it sort of reminds me to what Joshua, your presentation had the quotes in there about equity not being a side project and being part of an institutional identity and being core to that institution, I think is going to be quite critical.
Indeed, thank you very much. Yes, I would want to say, let me start with effective leadership. It opens the doors. It sets the direction that universities need to take. And once we've done that, we then need enabling systems and processes which operationalize the vision. Right, so we need to have those policies that align with what we want to achieve. Together with that, leadership fails when you do not have empowered staff. So it calls for capacitating staff and providing them with the resources to be able to address equity and inclusion. And if we miss this, that means student access and student success will collapse. So we need to have effective leadership together with systems, culture, resources, and shared accountability to ensure that students walk through the door and succeed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And that sort of ties with the presentation that Alex and Cecilia was talking around reframing access and equity through the social mission of universities. I think in a time where the trust in universities is also getting sort of lost, I think universities do need to reclaim that social license as well. So on that note, thank you very much to all our presenters as well for staying through for your presentation. For your commitment to this work as well. It's hard work as well, and a lot of times we carry that weight on our shoulders as well. So thank you very much, for navigating all those challenges and still pursuing the work that you've been doing. On behalf of WAHEN and everyone, thank you everyone for listening. Over to you, Imogen, if you have any final comments to say.
That's wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for all of the presentations. It was wonderful to hear from everyone. And just to those in the audience at home, at work, wherever you are at the moment, whatever time of day it is, this is the second of our Global Community Seminars of 2026. Coming up next on the 12th of February, we'll be discussing lifelong learning. Chaired by David Locke from the Magna Charta Observatory. So please do join us there. You can find all of the information at our website, which is worldaccesshe.com, or follow us on LinkedIn and you'll get all the notifications. Sonal will be presenting on the 12th of March, I believe. And coming up later in March, not on this list, but we will also be doing potentially a joint event with UNHCR on university access for forcibly displaced students. So do keep your eye out for that one as well, hopefully coming up soon. Thank you, everyone. I've posted a couple of links in the chat just so that you can find these events pages and things like that. And thank you to